Good morning, everybody. We will get started in just a second. Let everybody kind of get into the room here. We see the numbers going up pretty quickly. Thank you for joining us. I am Amy Lancaster King. I am Director of Workforce Development at the Metro Atlanta Chamber and Chair of MAX. Happy Friday the 13th, and hopefully nothing crazy will happen today for any of us and that it will be smooth sailing. Excited today for our presentation. Before we get into that, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to bring you this wonderful programming, especially this programming that we have lined up for you today. So WorkSource Georgia, Department of Human Services, Atlanta Career Rise, Goodwill of North Georgia, Metro Atlanta Chamber, First Step Staffing, and WorkSource Metro Atlanta, which represents the 5 workforce boards in our area. So with that, thank you to Daniela Perry, who is on our MAX board and Vice President, Georgia Chamber Foundation at the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to leave it to her to welcome and introduce our speakers. She has done a fabulous job putting together such wonderful speakers for today's MAX Minute. So Daniela, thank you so much.
Thanks, Amy. Really appreciate the introduction, and we are so excited to hear from our higher education systems this morning. I know we've had conversations from our K-12 partners, as well as some feedback too from folks helping think about how we transition from K-12 into higher education. So I think this is a great segue. And we're thrilled to have Commissioner Greg Dozier from the Technical College System of Georgia, as well as Dr. Tristan Denley, who serves as the Chief Academic Officer for the university system. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. And of course, remember, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat box, and we'll make sure that we get to those as well. But just wanted to start off, both, Commissioner Dozier and Dr. Denley, we know that, the university system as well as technical college system have had to do some major pivots, really to continue to meet the needs as we've gone from, completely remote to, now being able to offer some classes in person, some are still virtual. You all have continued to pivot to adjust to needs of students and families. I was wondering, though, if y'all could kind of walk us through some of what those pivots have looked like, and then maybe what's remained consistent, throughout all of those changes that y'all have gone from spring to fall and now planning for the next spring. So Dr. Denley, we'll start with you, if you don't mind.
Sure, happy to. First of all, thanks so much for organizing this today. It's a great opportunity to have that kind of conversation, and happy to talk about the work we've been doing. So, yeah, as you say, I mean, I think it's hard to think back to March. It seems like I saw a tweet just yesterday that say today marks the 2-year anniversary of the start of 2020, and I think that sort of sums it up. Just as I know the technical college system did, we moved completely to a remote form of instruction, and even there, I think that's sort of important. We didn't go online as much as we went remote. We recognized that being at least what we understood about the virus at the time meant that we could not be together, and so we needed our students to keep themselves safe in the ways that they needed to. But even there, we wanted to make sure that we were able to deliver instruction in a way that people were actually able to experience it. And so it was about recognizing that across the state, maybe not everybody had access to the kinds of streaming internet that you would need to be able to do what we're doing today, to have some sort of a simulcast. And so, yeah, we partnered with the public library system, as I think kind of works through my office as well, reports through my office. And so we worked with the public library system to make sure that we could distribute laptops and hotspots. We worked with all the state agencies to make sure that we could really try to make as much internet connectivity available as we possibly could across the state, and then tailored the ways in which we used and delivered instruction to recognize that not all of our students would have completely seamless access to high-speed internet, and so consequently we needed to pay attention to then the kinds of delivery methods we would use. So now, sort of fast forward that to then over the summer, we sort of continued that kind of remote instruction, but then building towards the fall. In the fall, all of our campuses are in person. We have students back on campuses just as they have been in the past, and yet not like they have been in the past. Of course, it's the case that we've had to make considerable adjustments to the way in which campus functions, but we have students back in dorms, we have students who are back on campus, we have students back in classrooms. We have a substantial number of our courses that are face-to-face, just like they always were, meeting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday in class with a faculty member, in labs, doing the kinds of work that they've been doing. And of course, we also have a number of classes where, because of just because of the challenges of social distancing, the capacities of the classrooms that we have now dramatically changed. That basically, to arrange for students to be 6 feet apart and to keep the kind of safety measures that we need to, it kind of drops the capacity at each of those classrooms by about a factor of 4, and so it changes. Of course, it's a rule of thumb, but more than a rule, but that's kind of the sort of change that happens. And so when you do that, now that means that maybe larger classrooms, you can't put everybody in the room all at one time. And so using ways in which students can be in the classroom maybe one time and then have another session that's virtual, and alternating that. So we have a number of classes that are in that kind of a delivery format. Same kind of thing when it comes to labs. We have I heard somebody actually down at ABAC was talking about the way they're doing dendrology labs, for instance, where they can of course still take their students out and they can look at the trees and do all the things that they needed to do. They just do it in a smaller group, which actually is kind of cool, because now the group is smaller and the conversation is probably more individualized than it has been. And then there's another group that are somewhere else, and they're running the numbers and running the data and doing the calculations that need to be done, and then they switch places. And so there's those kinds of things happening. And then now finally fast forward to the spring. So we have learned a tremendous amount, and I'm sure the technical college or technical college colleagues have too, learned a tremendous amount throughout the fall about what it means to deliver instruction in all these kinds of modalities in these different times. In the spring, we have really doubled down on really making sure that we're able to maximize in-person instruction to the greatest degree that we possibly can, maximizing the availability of in-classroom personalized in-person instruction, making sure that hybrid really is hybrid. So, yes, we have some courses where some of the material has to be in a digital format or in a remote format, but really making sure that if it's a hybrid course, that really means that there is an integral in-person aspect to that instruction, and really making sure the faculty members are able to take advantage of both of those different kinds of modalities. And then even, of course, I haven't touched on the fact that we always have had a substantial and well-developed online footprint. It's important for all kinds of other reasons that I know that we'll get into a little later on in the conversation. But regardless of the format, we really want to make sure that instruction is engaging, and that students really have a kind of interaction with their faculty and also with their peers, right? So there's an important interaction with students one with another in the classroom, in the learning environment. So that's kind of at least the academic journey that we've been on. And I do publicly want to make sure that I have the opportunity to say thank you to all the faculty and staff across the university system over the last few months. I mean, they have just done extraordinary work to be able to bring us to where we are. So with that, I know there'll be many things for us to talk about, but I'll hand over to the Commissioner. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Tristan. Similar to what was just presented, we made a rapid and we adopted the word nimble. I think that's the word you kind of hear across all systems and during this time, because we offered some online services or hybrid services, but over 66% of our student body was in person. And you can kind of understand that from a technical training perspective. When you're doing very skilled training, it takes a lot of lab work and folks have to be in person. But we learned how to really navigate, and just really building on what what was just said, we couldn't have done it without 22 great presidents across the college system, as well as just supportive faculty across the college system. But we use, like so many education platforms, we use Blackboard primarily as our online education platform, but we had so many that had not used it. So we had to ramp up very quickly, do some training, how to develop courses, and really pivot and shift in a very short time frame. And I'm so proud of the system actually being able to do that. When you look during that system, we had a motto that we were training heroes. As you looked at the essential workers across the state that did not have the luxury of being able to work from home, but had to go in each and every day. We were very proud at TCSG that a number of those individuals received their training through our system. And so we adopted the approach that we can't leave our workforce behind, just as USG did with their students. But we were very, very proud that even during this nimble time that we were able to actually award 36,000 awards to over 24,000 students during the COVID time period. Obviously, we're still in that, but during this crux of the last semester prior to rolling into fall. So very, very proud of the work that was done. But some of the things that we did is we did pause the AccuPlacer, the testing that we do as you come into our system for this fall to help really streamline the navigation into our system. We actually were the first state in the nation to incorporate an online enrollment system for adult education. That may sound a little odd, but with the federal requirements on identification and citizenship and a few other things, that had not been done across the state. So we paved the way here in Georgia to allow our students to actually continue their enrollment in adult education online. We already had that obviously on our technical education and other areas. We also launched a few things on our adult education side called Career Plus, as well as adopted the HiSET testing along with the GED testing, just to make sure we're navigating and making sure that those adult learners that did not have a high school diploma or a high school equivalency had as many alternatives as they could to continue their plight toward education, but also the workforce needs across the state are great. A few things just to dive in that I know our USG partners did as well. We threw out a lot of free training for individuals who had lost their jobs. But we were so proud that while folks were out of work or folks were at home and just wanted to expand their education, we provided professional development certificates via the web that were free. And we had over 7,000 certificates issued during that time period, and very, very proud to provide that service. But we also dove in, like so many did, not just our system, but we dove in to try to make sure we were doing our part. And I was so proud of some of our students, but primarily our faculty and our presidents out there. But we donated all our ventilators, our PPE, our masks, our gowns, our gloves. Our CDL trainers became a logistics hub for the delivery of those products across the state. We prepared our staff that train in our nursing area should they have to go to the front line, and really looked at that. We didn't know where that may end up. We tried, and I know USG partners were a little more successful, but we tried and were successful in a very limited amount of 3D printing to try to test out how could we help in the shields and the mass production. We continued to partner with the clinicals. One of the things as we looked at was as we weren't sure if clinicals were going to be able to continue, and as the hospitals ramped up and had needs, we were able to partner and continue with clinicals for our students and the needs of the public and the healthcare that were needed out there. We were able to actually, some of the small things that just make you smile and make you proud. You know, we typically sell a lot of plants across the state through our horticulture program at the end of the year to help support that effort. With everyone working from home, we tried to figure out how could we truly use that horticulture program to help. And so many of our colleges were able to donate the plants and things to our nursing homes to truly spruce up and just give a little bit of a home feeling to those nursing homes and shelters that weren't able to have visitors. We were also able to take our culinary arts program and all the food that was there that was not being utilized. We were able to donate it. And we're also, one of our child care areas was able to be utilized for our first responders. So while we tried to still keep things going, and so proud that we saw so many students to the finish line, as so many in the USG system and really across the state, really proud during this time that we not only were able to train our future workforce, but we were able to partner and really help across the state. Thank you.
Well, thank you both, Commissioner Dozier and Dr. Denley. I think, the contributions of both the university system and the technical college system of Georgia have been innumerable, and we're so grateful for everything y'all have been, pivoting through and adapting to make sure that we've got a strong workforce, but then also meeting needs of industry as we're all going through, challenging and constantly changing times. I did want to kind of think now, I know both of y'all have implemented programs kind of before COVID that are really innovative and future focused, and like the new TCSG Cloud Academy, and of course the Nexus degree from the university system. I was wondering if y'all could kind of share what prompted you to first, think about this, and how industries are evolving, and what are those future workforce needs, and then maybe how you're thinking about it a little bit differently in light of COVID. And Commissioner Dozier, we'll start with you if you don't mind.
Great question. Very proud of the work that you brought up around cloud computing. And we're able actually during this pandemic to launch that at Columbus State and a couple of others, and have a few of our first graduates actually just a few weeks ago. So immensely proud of that. I think what caused the look at cloud computing is we are very blessed across our 22 colleges. Every single program we have has an industry advisory board. And that industry advisory board really keeps us true to the needs of the community. So we are very nimble in making change in our career.
Dr. Dozier, I think your audio just cut out a bit.
Have I lost you?
No, we're back.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you.
But anyway, we're very close to the advisory committees that we have, and we try to make sure, and we're very nimble to make sure that the needs of the industry is matching what we're training. So one of the things that we were seeing in our counterparts across the nation was cloud computing was coming in, and many of our industries kind of were hearing about it, but honestly didn't realize the need and how rapidly it was coming to Georgia. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do in system office, is to look and see what are those things that are coming to Georgia that we haven't really yet adopted. And cloud computing was one of those areas. As we continue to look at that, and that'll be needed even more during this COVID time, because we know that when you look at automation and artificial intelligence, we know that everything's speeding up during this COVID time of folks working from home and using technology. So we're continuing to keep our pulse on that area, and making sure that as we look at manufacturing, how, we already know that the PLC training has changed, the logic coding has changed, but we also know that'll continue to change. We also know that robotics plays such a huge role, and we have new labs across the state, one that just opened up down at Ogeechee, that's a Phanex robotics lab. So when you walk into your technical colleges across the state, the actual lab training that you see is truly state of the art, and is matching what that future need is, and preparing those students for the industry needs of the future. But we also haven't started there. I know our USG partners have also dove into fintech, and as we continue to look at the different currencies and things of that nature, we have some really good work going in the fintech area. We also have partnered with Apple on Apple coding. So Apple coding is one during this pandemic time that we've really ramped up, and should have some courses that are being offered by next semester potentially. And so we're continuing to keep our pulse on what are the manufacturing needs. We will always know the core of our needs, but we also want to make sure that as manufacturing, as construction, as welding, as things continue to evolve, we want to make sure we have our pulse on that. So great question, and something I have a huge heart for.
Yeah, let me build off that. I think that this is something that we absolutely share. That both the technical college system and USG, we are committed to trying to make sure that we know what are the needs of the industries of the state. And how is that evolving over time? Because it clearly happens quickly. as you indicated, Daniela, we introduced the Nexus degree back in, actually now it's February 18. Seems like a long time ago now, but that new degree really grew out of work that we had been doing for a little time further. We created a group called the College 2025 group, and that this was a group from all across the state. There were industry representatives, academic representatives, leadership representatives, really a very diverse group of voices and minds to really think about, okay, where is higher education going? Where do we see that? Where do we see that shifting, as the name suggests, in 2025, which I guess is like just tomorrow now. But this was part of what we were thinking at the time was, okay, this is part of the challenge here is to realize that the future is already with us, right? So I think I heard this great quote, the future is already with us, it's just not evenly distributed. So there's little glimmers of things that will one day be commonplace, and what are ways in which we can kind of grab hold of that and then really make sure that partly we are prepared for that future, but partly we are able to be part of the shaping of that new future. And so that College 2025 report that came out, we recognized four main themes that we thought higher education would need to be significantly more adaptable or nimble, as the commissioner has described it. We used that word too, that it would be important that we would be able to provide education all the way across someone's lifetime, not just a kind of a one and done, you do your schooling and off you go. No, it's going to be the case that from here on out, throughout people's lives, they're going to need to come back and to dip in a bit more and a bit more and a bit more to understand what really actually are the essential skills to be an educated person, part of the workforce in the 21st century, and how do those things differ from what that looked like back in the 20th century or 19th century or whatever that might mean. And then lastly, what are ways in which we truly can be a partner with all of the different entities across the state, partners with ourselves, making sure that as a system we work good partners with our colleagues at TCSG, partners with the industries around us, partners with other governmental entities, all of those kinds of things. And I don't know, I mean, it's nice to be clairvoyant every once in a while, but you couldn't imagine, a set of points which would have prepared us better for, I mean, we couldn't possibly have envisaged the challenges of the virus, but they really, they're as true today as they ever were. So, in this Nexus degree, the idea was to create a new kind of credential which exactly fit with those kinds of basic design principles. It's off and it's going, and I'm happy to say, so we will actually have our first Nexus graduate will graduate this at a graduation ceremony this December. So we're literally seeing the kind of the birth of a new kind of degree. As far as we know, the first new kind of degree in the United States in almost 150 years. So that's exciting to see that happening. But more exciting, I think, is really recognizing what's behind it, which is really, as the commissioner said, ways in which we can be nimble to make sure that we provide the kind of education that the state needs to remain as competitive as it has been. Yes, we have the Fintech Academy, which is now up and going, and what's different about that is it's rather than that making available that kind of financial technology education in just a school or a couple of schools, a couple of institutions across the university system. It's available all across the state. So we have students, from Savannah all the way up to Rome, who are all taking advantage of the availability of fintech courses, recognizing just the vibrancy of that industry as part of the kind of the economic outlook of the state. Well, we similarly are ramping up capacity in healthcare, in nursing. We're graduating record numbers of both bachelor's and associate trained nurses, as well as master's trained nurses as well. I know that this is true for our TCSG colleagues as well. We recognized even before the pandemic the need for more nurses across the state, and not only nurses, but just really across all of the sectors of healthcare. And so there were already pieces in place to make sure that we could increase that capacity. That's still unfolding, and it will still, many of the benefits of that will be felt in the years to come. Same around around film. So I think you know about the Georgia Film Academy. Again, a great partnership that we have with our TCSG colleagues. Again, really making available those professional kinds of training resources. I don't think there really isn't another opportunity like this, not only in the nation, but across the world, where students who are part of higher education have the ability to go on to a professional soundstage, like we have down Pinewood or up at OFS or down in Savannah, and they can really actually take part in the creation of multi-million-dollar movies like Avengers movies and all those kinds of things. That's really astonishing. No one else has that ability. We have it right here in Georgia, and we're seeing the benefits of that. So the Film Academy, actually, as part of the COVID response, they created something that they call it it's a COVID safety course, and that it is completely free and available to the film industry. So if you're Disney movies or Hulu or whoever you are, and you want to come here and safely film your new TV series or your new movie, how do you do that? How do you keep the people who are working on your film set safe? So our Film Academy created those training resources. They're completely free and available. About 12,000 different people so far have been through that course, and the state is absolutely reaping the benefits of that. I'm reliably told that right now film here is moving. Where in other parts of the country, people are not able to film new content. Here in Georgia, that's happening, and we'll be able to, I guess, watch those things on your favorite streaming site in the foreseeable future. So lots of exciting ways in which preparations that we'd already made about preparing for the future, we little did we know the future was going to run right up on us as quick as it was. But I think we were well prepared to be able to deliver.
And we're so grateful for both of your leadership in helping to make sure that we were prepared to kind of adapt and grow. And I know it's such a huge benefit to our industries and businesses across the state. I want to, turn just quickly to kind of online learning. I know that we all kind of know the challenges of, doing more activities online, but I was wondering if y'all could kind of talk about maybe some benefits and opportunities that you've seen from doing this, especially as we're thinking about professional development, lifelong learning, making sure people are able to go back to school, especially if maybe they have transportation challenges or childcare. If there may be kind of some bright spots that y'all have seen as a result of all of this. And Dr. Denley, we can start with you if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine. So I think you're right that we for the good last 20 years in the university system have built a substantial online footprint, and actually we launched a brand new portal just at the beginning of COVID. I guess it was at the end of April. It was already planned that portal was going to be available, but we really fast tracked to get it out there. And that portal really allows students from all across the state to be able to see all of the sort of the diversity of online programs that are available from your university system institutions. We have well over 500 fully online degree programs, all the way from associate's degree all the way through to doctoral degrees all across the state. And I think that, part of that in the past was you sort of needed to know where to look to find them. And that was maybe, that's part of the evolution of these things sometimes, I think. But this new portal really allows, it's Georgia on My Line is the portal. I guess I can give a plug for it. And you can go there and you can explore, and you can see see what you're looking for, how that, what different schools offer those different degrees, what those look like. And it really explains what, degrees that are completely online, degrees that are substantially online. Sometimes those fully online degrees have some, some practical components, some work experience components, some lab components, some preceptorship or something like that. All of those things are possible, but in doing that, it really opens the doors, as you've said, to people who otherwise would not be able to take advantage of higher education. The picture that we always have in our heads, I think, still is that the university and college life means that you have to be in a room at a particular time, and it's students who are right out of high school, and that's not really the picture at all. Yes, of course, we have those students, and yes, of course, we want to serve the needs of those students, but it's equally the case that we have students who they're working adults and they're looking to make a change in their career, or to reposition themselves, or get a promotion, or just just simply live out the rest of their working life. And what are ways in which they can come back to us and balance that work and education kind of experience. And so often it's the case that being able to access high quality online education really is it provides the flexibility and the freedom for them to be able to do that in ways that they never would otherwise be able to do. It's also a really important piece of student success. I think that the university system has been absolutely committed to making sure that as many students as possible are successful when they come to go through the degrees that we offer, and we've fully implemented this wholesale approach to student success. We call it the momentum year. What we know about that is that actually it is important for students to study as full a schedule as they're able. That actually that in and of itself enables them to be more successful. And so part and parcel of the work that we've been doing even before COVID is recognizing how we also are partners in enabling students to take that full schedule. That, ideally we'd like students to take 30 credit hours over an academic year. Well, to enable them to do that, sometimes it's about when the courses are scheduled and the modalities and the capacities that they're provided in to enable students to be able to fill that schedule out to the degree that they might. They have complicated lives, they have work schedules, they have children. What are ways in which we can enable them to balance all of that by, as you say, by using high quality, engaging online instruction. Last thing I'll say is it's also the case that Georgia is really leading the way in graduate online education. So I think it's 5 years ago now that Georgia Tech added its new online master's degrees in computer science, and then shortly followed that with predictive analytics and cybersecurity. There's an enormous proportion now of the United States computer science master's graduates. Something, I think I'm going to get the statistic wrong, but it's something like 15 or 20% of the nation's of the nation's computer science master's degree graduates from across the country who now are graduating from that online master's degree from Georgia Tech. So really, this is a place where Georgia is absolutely leading the way, not only in the availability, but in just pushing the boundaries of what can happen in online instruction.
Thank you, Dr. Denley, and I'd almost say ditto to a lot of that. I would say, and looking at TCSG, we had a bigger step to get our system on that online platform, but I think from that online platform, we're going to have great dividends, similar to what USG is seeing. One of the blessings that came out of this was we learned we can do online training in the technical aspects. We still have to have the limited labs and bring individuals in to have the true hands-on skills, but we also learned that there's methods to actually teach our students through a virtual platform, whether it be a student who's actually take the assembly of a motor. We had one president instructor that had a great idea of actually having a student set up in a lab by himself and then remotely have him assemble the carburetor. And it was a great method to, as simple as that is, that was a big leap when you think about a mindset that we can't do something virtually. And so we have truly learned through that, and that's a small endeavor. But to look at a more global view, we were blessed. The governor and part of the CARES Act funding awarded TCSG $10.4 million. We did not have a global online platform as USG had created a few years ago, and as we have dove into this global platform that we're calling eCampus, the benefits that it's going to drive for our students, our communities, and our industry partners is just going to be it's going to be large. The simple thing of looking at equity across the state for students to be able to have similar programs that can be taught. So right now we may have a program because of industry needs in South Georgia, but we don't offer that program anywhere else in the state. And as we learn to actually have online courses in a global system such as eCampus, we can start actually offering that course statewide and having a true competitive environment across the state and actually enhance meeting the needs of our industry and our partners and grow business across the state. So there's many positives that we've seen through the virtual online. And the reality is we need to realize that training has changed. While I do think you'll see some shift back to normalization for TCSG and the enrollment pattern, I think you'll see that in USG as well. Having a young daughter who's a freshman this year down at Georgia, and I know she's yearning to get back to some online classes, but she's also enjoyed some in-person classes, but she's also enjoyed having some of the online courses. And I think as we hopefully get back to a normalcy, you're going to see her as a young student with a more balanced approach of some online, some in person. I think you're going to see that at TCSG as well. But the global shift that we saw so immediately, I think I mentioned earlier, we had about 66% of our students in person. And this last semester, we have 66% of our students online. And so we've seen a huge shift. We do believe it'll come back to a little normalcy. But I think the biggest benefit globally is we're going to be able to serve more students in a more robust effort at the end of this through truly challenging ourselves to see how far can we push the balance of hybrid and online courses across our system. One last thing that I would just add is you just look back at the beginning. I think I know the chancellor and myself, and I'm sure Dr. Denley and others are so proud to live in a state that once again yesterday was named the #1 place to do business. I think 8 years in a row.
8 years. Yeah.
And I know just like us, we truly believe that the small role that we play in making us that place to do business is something we're proud of. And I think that as you look at how eCampus and other online platforms are being more and more robust across the COVID system, across the pandemic, that's just going to position us even stronger for the future to hopefully continue that process. One small little additive, tangible touch of what the benefit is. I was down in Augusta just 2 days ago and got to go into our cyber training that USG participates as well down there in the Georgia Cyber building. But it was really neat. I was talking to the instructor and I asked him, I said, how are you actually able to service the students who are going through the training? And he actually had a class going. So I was actually able to see the interaction that we had virtually. But one of the small things that I really hadn't thought about that he brought up, he said, when I'm helping this student, I'm able to share the screen now and teach all the students. Whereas before, when he was in a purely classroom environment, he could have done that, but he really hadn't crossed his mind of being able to. He was going student to student to student, helping them with their specific issues, but the other students weren't learning from each other. And in this cyber environment, he felt so strongly that the quality of education for that program had actually increased because the students were truly learning from each other through that platform. Thank you.
I think that's just to piggyback off that. I think it is the case that we will come out of the other side of all of this with lots of new insights in the way in which education can happen. Because Greg, I'm sure if you'd said to one of your instructors, could you teach how to assemble a carburetor, across a virtual environment, they initially would have told you, no, you can't do that. And now, now we've been just the same way. We over the years, can you teach a language in this way? Could you teach this skill? I mean, I don't know how many times over the years I've been told by people, no, it's no possible way to be able to teach this any other way, whatever that way is, exactly the way that I'm doing it right now. And then we've all been forced to completely, just completely rethink what that is. And some of those things are, we would rather not do it that way. And we were, sometimes we were right. Actually, it really is hard to do it differently. But sometimes we were just completely wrong. And that actually there are other ways to do it. And so what I think is kind of exciting is there are things that will absolutely stick. And just as Greg said, that really creates a lot of opportunities across the state, because now, it really does open educational doors to people all across the state in ways that we never would have been able to envisage before. And I think that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. I think the increased opportunity for so many folks is just tremendous, especially new access to new programs is something that we all can get really on board with. Dr. Denley, I know we talked about, student supports and making sure that we're helping students throughout this process. I think it's no secret that, the economic crisis that's kind of ensued after the pandemic has been challenging for a lot of families, for a lot of students. And I know both TCSG and USG have been very proactive in thinking about how do we support students differently, whether it's through the TCSG Last Mile grants and things like that. But I was wondering if y'all could kind of share, maybe how needs have changed due to the pandemic and how you're thinking differently about it. So Commissioner Dozier, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. You hit on one of our largest focus, which is the Last Mile Fund, and I'll talk about it toward the end of my comments. But we are blessed in Georgia. TCSG is a very affordable pathway, one that actually gives a student a chance to truly learn multiple different methods to actually get in the workforce quicker. But we're also blessed, just as USG, with the financial help that we get from Hope and Hope Career Grant. For us, Hope Career Grant versus the Zell Scholarship that USG has. And that's just a fortunate thing. Just to put a little plug out there, we have 17 different career fields with many certificates under those that if a student chooses, that's a great pathway where the state, through the Hope funding, actually funds 100% of tuition. And so very excited about that. But we really did dive into your specific question during this time, what changed. And I think we touched on it earlier, was truly just the how do we make sure students who do not have access to broadband and other things, how do we continue to have that access to help them? The TCSG Foundation here at the state, as well as each of the colleges' foundations, really did a quick request and fundraising around laptops. And as simple as that may sound, we're very proud that TCSG Foundation very quickly had so many people supporting the ability for us to buy and send laptops out to our colleges to get to those students that didn't have access. The other thing that we did is our foundations, as well as our colleges, went out and purchased some Wi-Fi Rangers. I really don't have today the answer of the success of those Rangers. We're still trying to see how successful they are. We know they have been, and we know they haven't been. Everything's about access for that Wi-Fi Ranger to tap into some type of cell service and provide a broad range of service. Columbus was a real good test area for us. We truly partnered with that local community, and I can't remember, bought many Rangers to put out in the community to try to help really link that ability to have access to education. We also opened up those parking lots. That's simple, but that was something that we could do very quickly to make sure we continue there. But the big thing is we really amped up our push on how do we truly help those students get to that finish line. And I know USG does that as well. I'm a proud graduate of Georgia State, and I know they have their program as well. But very proud. The Woodruff Foundation came forward here just the last week and issued a grant, or awarded a grant to TCSG Foundation here at the state level for $1 million toward the Last Mile Fund. And with that $1 million, we plan on partnering with the foundations at each college and making that $1 million turn into hopefully several million. And so as we continue to look at the plight of how we help our students through different federal programs, as well as state opportunity through HOPE, as well as keeping our tuition at a very reasonable rate, we have some great industry and personal folks who believe in getting students across the finish line, and that last mile fund is a big one. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Commissioner Dozier, we had a question in the chat about if film industries are kind of considered under that HOPE career grant, if there are kind of film tracks that are considered under that area, if you could recall that off the top of your head.
I'm gonna wing it, so I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they are.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they are.
Yeah,
Great.
I think we'll both be right or we'll both be wrong, but I think you're exactly right.
Well, great. Well, Dr. Denley would love to hear from you too.
Yeah, so maybe I'll begin where the commissioner left off. All of our schools, similarly, Georgia State actually has led the way across the nation in what they call Panther grants, these last dollar scholarships that, for those who are listening who don't know about this phenomenon, it just happens incredibly often, very surprisingly often, that students are prevented, I'll say, from being able to continue with their degree or finish out their degree, just get that last course or that last bit of their degree because of some financial hurdle. Often a financial hurdle where they just don't have maybe 300, 400, 200, some small amount of money that prevents them from finishing out and completing that degree that they've been working on. And so, the foundations all across the USG institutions for several years now have been trying to find ways in which they can, first of all, identify those students and then be able to fill that small gap that then makes all the difference in the world to this student who, we need them to have not part of that degree. We want them to have that whole degree, the credential of value that they need. And it is often a relatively small amount of money that's involved, but that small amount of money can make all the difference in the world. So these sort of last mile scholarships are an incredibly important phenomenon across higher education in general, but certainly here in Georgia. We too are, of course, the beneficiaries of very generous support from our legislative colleagues, and we want to absolutely say thank you for all of that support. We, on the other hand, have committed ourselves to keeping tuition as low as we possibly can. So the 2 out of the last 4 years, tuition hasn't increased at all across our system, and even when it has, it's been as little as we possibly can. I mean, the average is like over the last 5 years is something like 1.7% or something like that, well below the price of inflation. So we're committed to making sure that the cost that's experienced for students who are going through to our institutions is as low as we're possibly able to make it. As well as that, we also are committed to trying to find ways in which we can reduce those costs. So one of the ways in that, I want to make sure people know about this, is what's called Affordable Learning Georgia. This is a project that's now, I think it's in its 5th or its 6th year, that we partner with teams of faculty on multiple campuses and work with them to rearrange the way in which they teach the course so that the instructional materials are free, completely free. So using open access materials, open education resources, publicly available materials. Sometimes we commission those materials and create them for ourselves and put them as part of those publicly available materials. Sometimes we take existing materials and reform them. But no matter what, it's about working with faculty to change the structure of their course, the way they teach the course, to rather than using a commercial textbook, instead to use a completely free instructional material. We've been extraordinarily successful in that, and so it's again a place where Georgia really is a national leader. The impact of that last year, that had an impact of about $50 million across our to the students across our system who no longer had to buy textbooks or instructional materials to be able to take the classes that they take. And you can imagine that makes all the difference in the world. It's not really rocket science here. We've always thought for years, you know, if everybody could have the textbook, they'd do an awful lot better in their classes. And you know what? We were right. The trick is when textbooks are, you know, and I think everybody knows, commercial education textbooks are often quite expensive, $100, $200, $300. Well, if you're a low-income student, especially now, you know, people who have been so hit by the economic downturn caused by COVID, having to go out and buy those expensive textbooks can be all the difference in the world between you being in college and you not being in college. And so now our being able to partner with our faculty to change the way in which they teach those classes and instead build them around still very high quality, but now completely free instructional materials makes all the difference in the world to someone who perhaps otherwise might have had to drop out, and we don't want them to do that at all. So yeah.
Absolutely. I know my parents would have appreciated less expensive textbooks. I'm sure a lot of other USG and TCSG parents do as well. Amy, I wanted to turn over to you. I know we've got some questions in the chat and we're running a little close on time too, but if you could kind of go through some of those.
Sure. So our first question is from Dr. Danielle Sweat about, can someone touch on any changes to access to education for those who are formerly incarcerated, and is there funding that includes them at all?
Sure, I will touch, and I have to get back with you, Ms. Sweat, on some specifics, but I always like to start what we're doing first for our incarcerated population. And very, very proud of what the state has done. One of the things, when you look at our GED, which TCSG oversees adult education, I think everything starts with how are we moving folks forward from that standpoint. And the Department of Corrections and TCSG has had a great partnership over the last several years. I don't know what the numbers were last year, but 2 years ago, we had over 3,000 GED graduates that while folks were incarcerated. At the same time, while they were incarcerated, we have a great partnership across the state with TCSG where we're offering skills training inside the facilities as well. And I believe we usually hovered around 18 to 20,000 different awards a year while they were incarcerated. We truly believe in the power of education on rehabilitation. As many of you know, I was the former commissioner of corrections, so it's deep in my heart. And we always used a RAND study to show that return on the investment. And while education always showed somewhere around a 5 times return on those incarcerated, meaning individuals coming back to prison after they were released, technical education, skills training showed a 15 times return on the investment. So it's something I really do appreciate that question, and know that that education is a difference maker for those incarcerated. As they come out, I will have to educate myself and kind of respond to you at a later date. I know that they still qualify for some Pell once they get out. I know there was some push at one point in time to have them qualify for Pell while they were incarcerated, and I'm not sure where that is at this point in time. But there is opportunities, and we're an open access system at TCSG, and we truly try to have a handoff for someone who is in the system getting training to someone who comes out of the system. And one of the neat things, many of our colleges, we have graduations inside of our prisons, just like you would have outside of our prisons for those that are earning awards. And we typically have a top student, just like you would in any other type of educational environment. And those top students in many cases earn a scholarship for when they get out to continue their education. And so while that may not hit the global view that you're asking, I hope that gives you some tidbits, and obviously would love to answer that specifically at a later date. Thank you.
Well, we'll be happy to have you back to answer more
Perfect.
questions. So we've got probably more questions than we have time, but there's one more question that I really would like to touch on, is about with all with the impact on students of the pandemic and their families. It's not only been economic, but it's been emotionally and mentally. And what have you at both of your systems implemented to kind of address this growing need around emotional and mental health?
Yeah, so actually, again, we had actually created a task force around student mental health actually just a few months before COVID hit, and so again, it's always better to be lucky than good, and that was it was something where we clearly mental health for students is something that has been on the on the rise, and the awareness and impact of that for several years. And we really wanted to understand that well and understand what we could do as a system. We were perfectly then poised to make sure that we were able to recognize those needs and to move quickly. So we actually did provide telecounseling to all of our students across the system as part of the services that we were providing. And now, again, thanks to some generous support from the governor's office, we're actually going to be ramping all of that support around mental health and telecounseling and just a full spectrum of mental resiliency and wellness to our students over the coming year and into the future. So it's I think it's something which, as you say, it was important before COVID hit, and now suddenly the importance is magnified, multiple fold. And so recognizing not only just the support that we can give students when they are learning what they're learning, but the emotional the emotional support that we can provide for them as they go through a very challenging life situation is just as important. So yeah.
So the only thing I'll add is TCSG had done the same thing probably about 1.5 years ago to 2 years ago prior to my coming to the agency. TCSG did a full force look and had mental health counselor training at each college and identified individuals that could actually provide services at each college. So we've just continued that effort and obviously ramped it up during this time. One of the other things I would just point out is we're very proud that during this pandemic, TCSG was recognized as the only Purple Heart college system in the nation. And what that means is because a lot of these mental health issues come with the PTSD side of things with our veteran population. We're very proud that we have something called green zones at every college where we have an area for our military right here on the cusp of Veterans Day. Very proud that we have an area for those that are actually in our colleges, either as a student or as a faculty, can go and actually find services from our team, but also have a place where they can sit down and talk to each other. And so we've done many things around the mental health side of things, as Dr. Denley mentioned, with just all the focus even prior to COVID. That's something that's taken very serious across the system.
Well, thank you.
I will echo just since it was Veterans Day just a day or so ago, across the USG institutions. Similarly, we actually have there's a military center on every campus where similarly, I think it's incredibly important for those who are veterans or active military to have that ability to share with one another and to sit down and get those services. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, we are out of time. I want to thank you both for taking the time to be with us this morning, but also just the magnitude of the work that you guys have been doing since COVID started, and just the number of changes and the holistic approach you've taken, not only to converting to everything being online, but around the student, the whole picture of students' financial needs, students' digital needs, emotional needs, and then making sure they're getting quality curriculum. Herculean for sure. So we are grateful to your leadership and what you've done to help Georgia students continue to thrive in this environment. And I'm hoping that it will get easier as we go forward. We would love to have you back. There are more questions than we can get to, of course, but thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And on behalf of Max, hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful day.